Welcome to this episode of the Growthcast. My name is Jackson Campbell, joined here again today with my great friend, my mentor, my coach, Dallas Pruitt, for another extended cut episode. I'm very excited to be here. It is May. We're rolling into a new month, and we're not actually rolling out a book of the month this month. We'll get into that in just a second. But if you are new to the podcast, welcome. We're very happy to have you here. Please rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. Like I said, we're very grateful to have you here listening. This is the extended cut episode, so Monday through Thursday. Just give a quick, brief introduction to the Growthcast if you're new to being here. The podcast is Monday through Thursday with Dallas Pruitt. We call those the daily drips, where Dallas Pruitt jumps on, talks mindset principles, 3 to 5 minute episodes, very powerful and enlightening to start your day and to get your mindset straight before you dive into your day's work. On Friday, I get the opportunity to sit down with Tyler Devereaux and interview him about mindset principles, about real estate, about what he's doing in his life. Those are also very impactful episodes where there's so much value and things to learn from. So definitely tune into those Aloha Fridays. And then Saturday, what you're listening to right now is myself with Dallas Pruitt for these extended cut episodes. Now, these extended cut episodes are going to change up a little bit. They're going to change. We're not quite ready to announce what those are going to look like, but as I did allude to, we don't have a book of the month this month. So we're not going to have a book of the month that we go off of every month for these extended cut episodes. There's more changes to come, and we will announce those as those get ready. But let's dive into today's episode. I'm very excited to dive into today's episode. Today we're going to talk about growing pains and some of those things that you need to be aware of as you're growing. Right, growing is a funny thing. It's not a funny thing. It's an interesting thing. You feel a lot of emotions and you feel a lot of change as you grow. A lot of times those are really good euphoric type feelings where you can see the future and you're proud of yourself and you're very grateful for growth. But then there's times in those moments of growing that are growing pains. Right? We forget about those things. We don't often talk about those things here on the Growthcast. We don't usually talk about the negative things, and we don't usually shine a light or focus on those things because we know that where your attention goes, your focus also follows there. So we don't like to talk about the negative things that might come or the pains that you might feel when you're going through growth. But that being said, I think it's very important that we do touch on them and we do talk on them, so that we can be aware of them, as we're growing and as we're changing and as we're ever becoming the great person that we're supposed to be and that we're supposed to be on this earth. We can be aware of these pains and these things that pop up. So today we're going to talk about five in particular. But before we dive into these 5, Dallas, anything you want to add to the intro there as we kick off and dive into these 5 things?
No, I'm just literally pumped to dive into all 5 of these things, and I appreciate, you guys allowing us to kind of take a different route today, and I think that you're going to continue to see a progression with us as people, to be a little more vulnerable, a little more raw about this kind of stuff, because honestly, the untold side or the side that's just not as told, outwardly, regarding growth, I think is just as or even more important. And it's also stuff that, literally like we're going through on a daily and weekly basis. Myself personally, right? Speaking only to my own individual experience. Gosh, damn, it's heavy some days, dude. It's heavy some days, and that's why I'm pumped to jump into these 5 things.
Dallas, and it's really good to hear that from you, man. You're the mindset guy. You've been studying mindset for so long, and we all learn so much about growth mindset and how to grow ourselves and how to become better people through you as an avenue. You are a teacher for a lot of us. So to hear that you too have those struggles as you grow and those pains that come with growth and that come with the inevitable change that comes with that growth. It's good to hear that you too struggle with those things, right? Like you and I were talking before this episode about becoming and how that's always. You never stop becoming a better version of yourself. So therefore, growth is always happening. And if growth is always happening, that means there's always going to be growing pains to one level or one aspect of your life to another. So Dallas, let's dive into some of these.
Let me correct that. You're always becoming, but you're not always becoming a better version of yourself. You could be becoming a worse version of yourself, depending on how you choose to navigate or respond. Respond to these things, honestly, that we're going to talk about. And I think that's where the heaviness comes from, is like sitting in reality going, at least for me, sitting in reality going like, oh, like I'm not taking action here, or I'm dropping the ball here, or I don't know here. I think that is the fear that probably kills me, is I know that it is an either or thing. It's either better or worse. It's not in between. And I think I personally struggle with that part of it, is knowing that and then beating myself up over all of that and a lack of right response regarding one of these things, or a delayed response regarding one of these things, because these things are just reality and they are tough. They're just they're very painful and hard to get through sometimes. And
definitely
everybody's susceptible to it, man.
And it's through these painful and hard things is how we grow, right? Like you can't grow without some sort of breakdown either, right? Like we use the comparison of muscles going into the gym. Like the only way that your muscles grow is if you tear them apart, if you rip them apart and you beat them apart and let them regenerate and grow into stronger and bigger muscles, right? So it's the same thing with your mindset. As you grow, you're gonna be broken down. There's gonna be times where you just get beat up and you just fall into a negative place. One of the things that Dallas and I were talking about prior to jumping on this episode as well, that I kind of wanted to mention real quick before we dive into these 5 things, is a lot of times we change our mindset and we make that decision. And for me at least, and I know for you too, Dallas, and I'm sure for a lot of our listeners, we make that change, and then there's no negotiating. There's no negotiating. This is the change. This is how I'm going to live my life. This is the perspective I'm going to have when challenges pop up. Yet we make that decision in our brain and we set that as our mindset. But unfortunately, the physical body, the physical mind, has a bunch of error-ridden thinking that's still in there, a bunch of bad habits that are still there, even though you changed your mindset to be better, right? There's still a lot of habits, a lot of error-ridden thinking, and a lot of things that you have to change that don't just change on a dime, but you have to continuously work at to change. So these are a few of those things that always happen as you grow. But let's jump into the first one, Dallas, here. That is fear of change. Right? Fear of change can actually impede people from growth, yet it's one of those pains that comes with growing. So Dal, let's talk about fear of change. I want to flip it over to you. Why is that? Why is that a struggle, and how do we overcome that?
Oh, well, I actually thought about this one the other day on my run, and because it's something that I am personally going through. I mean, literally, that's where my thoughts came from, was like I'm thinking about a very specific scenario that my family and I are in with some big decisions regarding change. So as I was left to my own thoughts on this long run, knowing what I know through learning in the areas that I've spent my career, it really came back to just familiarity, and the brain's job to just keep us safe. And so many times we misinterpret something, we misinterpret a change as dangerous. That's like the response we feel, is that it's dangerous because it's unknown. But in reality, it is not dangerous at all. Like bare bones, taking yourself out of the situation, detaching from it, it's not. Most things like that aren't even dangerous. They're not even that scary. The reality of them are just pretty basic. It's like moving parts, But the lack of familiarity around it, the unknown, the fear of the unknown is a real thing. The fear of the unknown is a real thing because you've never experienced it before, right? So you'll muster up all these different, your brain will go down these paths of trying to keep you in comfort, trying to keep you in what is familiar, trying to keep you in what, because it interprets it as safe.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. This is safety. I know how to help you navigate this.
Dude.
Dallas, you know how to navigate this. You know how to master this. You might have even mastered this. So why would you, right, bail from that? And then you start to create, then the harder part ends up happening where it's like you start to create like all these different reasons why you shouldn't now, and how you can do what you're really trying to do by avoiding that thing you know you need to do.
Right.
And that is where I start to beat myself up. Is I know what I need to do. I actually know the one thing I need to do. But I'm trying to work around it.
Right.
I'm literally trying to work around it because I'm scared of something I've never experienced. But then just like getting back to reality of like, that doesn't mean it's bad or dangerous. It's just unfamiliar. And me like valuing what I value the most, which is learning and growth, you think the answer would be freaking easy then, because it's like, well, there's your like green light.
Yeah.
Go do that one thing. But again, it's like this, it's like anchoring back. You feel like you're like risking too much.
Right.
You overthink it. And
a lot of, as you're talking, something that I'm noticing here with the fear of change as well is a lot of times that we don't want to change because we've worked so hard to become that person that we are now, right? We've worked so hard and we've got these beliefs and we've taken these risks and these challenges that we've taken down to become who it is that we are right now. So from time to time, as we need to step into that next version of ourselves, it's like, well, shit, I just worked so hard to become this person. I don't want to leave those things because now I'm finally in control, right? That's another thing that comes with fear of change, dude, is like you're not in control of things you don't know. So, but that being said, at the same time, the things you don't know are where you find your biggest opportunities, right? That's when the biggest opportunities and the biggest learning lessons come from it. So it's change is such a good thing, and even that change is scary. Like even that, like the fear of change, that's a good thing because it makes you more alert. It makes you more aware of like, oh wow, I used to be this person. I need to become this different version of myself. There's so many opportunities there for me to grow, even though it's a little bit unknown.
I'm going to take a page out of your book. I'm going to take a page out of your book with this one too, because speaking to personal experience, again, lately, like the lack of peace that you feel, see if I can articulate this properly. The lack of peace that you feel, this is the conversation my wife and I have been having lately, is it's just like her and I both feel like we should have peace given our current circumstance. My wife and I live in a beautiful area, have a beautiful home, have healthy children, great teachers in their schools, great paying jobs or job. You think we would feel so like peaceful. And then I beat myself up because I don't feel peaceful. I'm like, well, why do you not?
Right.
Like, what's wrong with you? Are you ungrateful? And I literally beat myself up over this.
Mm-hmm.
And she does too. I can see it every day. We literally talk about this stuff all the time. But the reason we don't feel that is also part, and this ties into the fear of change thing, is we're not acting in accordance with our value system. My wife and I, both of us, we value learning and we value growth. We both have a very foundational core belief that that is job number one in our lives as individuals. And it just so happens we're married and we share a freaking life together, which makes it even cooler. But we're not acting in accordance with our value system. And when we don't take action in accordance with our value system, that's where that lack of peace comes from. It's not because we're ungrateful. for what we have. We're extremely grateful for what we have in this life. It's just when we don't act in accordance with our value system, you feel that level of unrest. You feel that level of dissatisfaction, whatever you want to call it. You could call it whatever you want. But for us, it's peace. We do not feel peaceful, right? And so I don't know if that ties in, but I just wanted to share that because, again, on a personal level, that's part of this growing pain. And coming to an understanding within the growing pain is a lot of the times, yeah, fear of change is something that's real, but as you grow, most people that grow, they value growth, and that's probably like a key component right there when you're feeling that lack of peace is you're just not acting in accordance. That fear of right that you're giving into and you're not leaning into and doing that thing you should do. Well, it's because that change comes from that, right? Growth. Change is another word for growth. And if you value growth, then you have to attack the change. You have to attack the thing, and you don't need to attack the thing and be like, I'm going to attack the thing. You just literally need to lean into it. Just lean into the fear. Just do it. Let it unfold. And you'll feel better. You'll feel peace again. Yeah. Weirdly enough.
Dude, so good. So good. Because you just gave the antidote of how to overcome that fear of change. If you are ever feeling that fear of change, if you're ever feeling that weight of fear that comes with change, really the question that you need to ask yourself based off what you just said in your experience, Dallas, is really the only question you need to ask yourself is this change in line with my values? Is this change in line with my values and in line of growth? And if you can answer yes to that, then there is no reason why you need to fear. Because if you're living in accordance to your values and who you believe you are supposed to be, then the right things will flow from that. So if it's a change that's supposed to happen and it's supposed to be a good change, then it will inevitably happen if you're focusing on those values rather than what it is that you want or what it is that you're going to attain by making this change. Right? So it's coming back down to making those changes and those decisions based out of your values, not out of things that you just want out of pleasure or just out of petty wants, right? So that's it's so valuable. Dallas, I want to break down these other ones, and that's what we're going to talk about for the rest of the month. We're going to talk about growing pains for the rest of the month. I just decided. We're going to talk about growing pains, and we're going to break down these other ones.
Great executive decision. I love it.
But I just wanted to Today, let's just talk about fear of change. I almost want to just wrap the episode up on fear of change, on what we just talked about right here, because it's so impactful and so important. And that's the actionable. If you are having a hard time changing, and there's a lot of fear there, and you don't want to change, look at the change that you're making. Is that change in line with the values that you have, that you've set for yourself? Is it in line with your goals? Which should be, because if it's in line with your values, then it will be in line with your goals. Then that's the change that you should make. And the change should be inevitable. Like I said, it should just happen. The change should just happen, and there shouldn't be a ton of fear there because you're living your life according to your values. The fear should dissipate.
Absolutely.
So, Dal, anything else? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I do have something else.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, this is therapeutic for me. This is money. So, time and season is something to think about as you navigate life. That's helped me. There's a time and a season for things, for certain change, and then the next layer of change and what I mean by that is you say yes to certain things right now, but that doesn't mean that you're going to say yes to those things forever and that you should hold on to those things forever. Because your yeses carry weight, and you only have so many of them you can give out, and your no's carry weight, and there's, right, it's a very powerful word. It's probably the most powerful word in our lives that we can use is one of, and that is no. Because when you say no to something, that means you're saying yes to something else, right? And vice versa. There's always a trade-off there, always. But there's a time and a season. what I said yes to in my 20s is different than what I'm saying yes to right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's like my life. I don't even know if I can articulate this, but the way I've thought about it lately is it's like my life has went through this sifter, right? Like at the top of that sifter, there was like all these yeses that I would throw out. I was gaining experience, but then I started to ask better questions, and I started to introspect, and I started to think about life differently as time continued on. So I started saying those yeses continued, like only the fine, really good stuff made it through the bottom of the sifter by the time I got to a certain time and next time in season. And now I understand the power of saying yes at the right time and the power of saying no at the right time. And it's almost like it's gotten to the opposite side of that sifter to where it's like producing all this fine, awesome, right, like product. And that's where I'm at my life now is I know too much. I don't mean that in a way. I've learned too much about me, and I've learned too much about principles, and I've learned too much about my life and how I want it to continue to unfold and what I want it to produce for my kids and my wife and my work and the people I serve, God being number one, to where I can no longer say yes or no, for that matter, to certain things. And I would just invite everybody to just kind of sit on that and think about that no matter what stage of life you're at. Again, time and a season. Just because you've said yes to a ton of things, right, doesn't mean you have to always, you should always, if you do value learning and growth, what you do, you're here, you're listening to this freaking podcast. You value learning and you value growth probably above most other things in your life. That's why you're here. Just go inside and ask yourself, like, what do I need to say no to? And what should I be saying yes to? And just know that those things carry weight, And there was that part that you had kind of put together prior that I read through that said, even if it means missing out on opportunities for development in life, right? People avoid taking risks because even if it means missing out, right? Because they're fearful. Well, I think that's a good starting point too to kind of combat that fear. Is just like weed something out. Like don't be fearful of what that means. Like literally just weed something simple out.
Address it. Yeah.
Address that shit and just start there. Attack those little things. And just remember, like your yeses mean so much and your no's mean so much. Quit throwing them out thoughtlessly. Think about it for 5 seconds. Think about what you're really saying yes to and what that means for everything else, time and energy-wise. And what are you saying no to? And think about what you're missing out on because of that no. And I think if you can ask those questions earnestly, honestly, and intentionally, that will lead you down the path, the right path for you, mm-hmm. and open up the door to the new time and season of your life that yields, again, higher level learning and more growth. That would be one more thing that I'd add on that piece before we close out today's.
I mean, it's so good. Thank you for sharing that, Dallas. That personal experience and that personal growth that you've been feeling, dude. It's definitely impactful for us to be able to hear as well. It's so humbling and good to hear these things, Dallas. So thank you for sharing these things. Such a great episode, and I'm excited to dive into these other
Me too.
These other growth pains and how we can address them, and as they pop up in our lives, how do we address them? How do we use them to our benefit, and how do we make sure we have the right perspective going into them? So Dallas, thank you so much, my man. Thank you everybody to listening today. We love you. We appreciate you. Please tune in again on Monday to listen to Dallas's drip. And we appreciate y'all so much. Please leave a rating and review if you haven't at this point. Take care, y'all.